Welcome to the Power of Her podcast. I'm Dawn Sinkula, and I'm so glad that you're here. So grab your coffee or your wine, get cozy, and let's dive in. Well, in this episode of the Power of Her podcast, we are sitting down with Nancy Griffin, who is a CFP and the founder of Women, Worth, and Wellness, a powerhouse advocate for women's health and wealth and self-worth. From corporate world to wealth management, Nancy, you have spent decades helping women step into leadership, build legacy, feel confident in every area of life. And we're going to talk about daring leadership, authentic living, and why your net worth and self-worth are really connected more than you think. So if you are ready, let's jump in. This one's going to be for you. Okay. Nancy, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here. As I mentioned, you have just got a plethora of background and experience, but tell us a little bit in your own words, kind of how you've gotten to this point as, the founder of Women, Worth, and Wellness, as well as a CFP.
Okay. Well, it's been a great adventure. And
Yeah,
of course, we know along the way you have lots of ups and you have lots of downs, but the good news is that you just keep on going.
right.
I was in a corporate career and the glass ceiling kicked in. And so that's when I decided it's time to move on. I decided that about 3 or 4 years before I actually took the leap. But the VP kept talking me into staying, and that was one of the first key learnings because I was taking advice from a person who did not have one entrepreneurial bone in his body. And I was respecting his advice and, him being a champion for me, but not a champion to the extent that I was expecting. So I left. I ran politically, and that was a real leap, I'm telling you.
I can
But we
imagine.
had an incident in our community, and it's one of those incidents where you want to just jump off a tall building and tell people this is what's going on, and you don't really know. Well, you can't do that. And so I thought if I can present myself exceptionally well and make the case, then people will have increased their awareness,
Sure.
and then we'll build better going forward. And that's exactly what happened. So now I'm in the community and I'm basically leading in several different ways. And the
Hmm.
more you do in the community, the more there is to do. And it was
Yeah.
through that time that I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to get a job out of this community because this is never ending. And so I had done a tremendous amount of outplacement at Procter and Gamble with
Mm.
executives and whomever. And it was a consulting firm that had recruited me. Through that process, I met this lady who had been a VP, I think at American Express, and had been given a package. And of course, now she's got all this money to invest. So she went looking around, realized that it was primarily a men's world.
Totally.
And,
Right.
and then she decided she was going to be an advisor. And so when I talked to her, she got to know me and she said, Nancy, I'm not sure why outplacement consulting is the place for you to, build a 20-year career
Yes.
starting in the early or the 90s. So she said, why don't you consider wealth management? Meet with my manager. So I met him. He and I hit it off beautifully. And he said, well, you've got to have some licenses. And so
Yeah.
go get some licenses and then come back. And so away we go. So now I'm in an entrepreneurship role because I'm
Mm.
with a great firm, but they
Yeah.
don't find the clients for you. You've got to go find your own clients, which makes sense
Sure.
because you're only going to work with people where you feel you can add value and where you really care about them. So
Hmm.
I decided to focus on women, not exclusively, but primarily, because that was just when women were starting to earn enough money that they really wanted to have their own investment portfolio.
Sure.
And so off I went. And that was the beginning of the new adventure.
Amazing. I had a corporate experience. I think I mentioned this to you also for a big retailer here in the States. And, something that you mentioned around the glass ceiling and listening to somebody else who didn't really have your best interest at heart really hit home for me when you said that, because I stayed with a company for 17 years thinking, I was gonna be the next, whatever president of this company. And I kept getting kind of the dangling carrot and the whole thing. And once I realized like I'm better for myself than I am for somebody else, I also took the jump and it really made quite a difference in my journey as well. So I can really appreciate that part of your life, because I have that very much in common with you. And I think a lot of women do, right? And are in that space. And then they don't really know what to do if they get a package or they have wealth or they start building an entrepreneur business where they're making decent money. And I know your brand right now is really built around that synergy between wealth and self-worth and things like that. Why do you believe that that's essential for women in, their approach to financial planning through that wellness lens?
Well, so important. And going back to our corporate experiences, I don't think men knew how to deal with this.
Right.
Like, I think they thought
Totally.
it's kind of like a trophy wife.
Uh-huh.
They would promote us and then they would champion us. And then there was a big stall.
Right.
And so shortly after, well, actually 24 hours after I'd resigned, this one fellow got in touch with me and he said, well, why don't you come and work with me internationally? And I'm thinking, that's the kind of thing you set up 12 to 18 months in advance. Like, I'm not going to do a U-turn now.
Right.
Anyway, once I started to work with women and I
Yeah.
get to know their stories, you realize they have a tremendous amount of responsibility in their families for their families' health and wellness.
Yeah.
Like, whoever decided that they should be the nurse practitioner on site?
Right.
And so, they've
Right.
got a really busy schedule. And as women, we know we can do everything all at the same time. But how do you really know if perhaps somebody in your family is suffering from heart disease? How do you know? So
Yeah.
I started to do events with not-for-profit, health-related organizations focusing on women. And
Mm,
we know that heart disease is the leading cause of death for women. We know that the symptoms between men and women are quite different.
yep.
So when I would host these events, I would charge a nominal amount, $25 or $50, and that would then be a charitable donation. So at the same time we're getting new information, new contacts, I'm also introducing how you increase your net worth through charitable giving. And of course, fast forward 30 years later to philanthropy.
Yeah.
And also having some go-to contacts if you've got some questions. You can't
Yeah.
go to your emergency department or call your doctor. Is this person having heart disease? So now you've got resources.
Yeah.
And of course, the more events like these that I did with just about everything you can think of, the more women had increased their awareness about different health-related issues.
Yeah.
But going back to why health, I mean, we can all hear our mothers saying, if you don't have your health, you're not going anywhere anytime soon. You won't
Yeah.
be able to play volleyball today, or you won't be, you've
Right.
got to, you've
Yeah.
got to put some fuel in the tank.
Yeah.
And so that's when really I said, you know what, before we even talk about a well scenario, let's talk about health, but then twin the two.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of how your programs have really been set up now, right? And I know you
Right.
often speak about daring and caring sort of leadership and a practice and things like that. Talk to me a little bit about how we cultivate both of those types of things in our personal health and wealth as we sort of think about the future. I mean, you and I are a little bit later in life, right? And
Right.
so I think about for, my daughter who is in her early 20s, and I think about, gosh, how nobody taught me about these things or shared this with me. How do I think about that as a young person and maybe now at a little bit older stage of life?
Well, the good thing is about your daughter and young women that age, they really want to be smart. Like
Yeah.
they're focused on being smart. So it's like, tell me, help me
Mhm.
understand. Whereas when we were that age and somebody's trying to tell us something, it's like, I know, like stop
I
trying
know
to tell.
everything. Thank you.
Exactly. But
Right.
now women really, really do want to escalate, and so they are listening. And
Yeah.
so it's just a simple matter of paying attention. Like what are the possibilities longer term? The other thing is how these two are twinned. If you're working with a fabulous wealth advisor, they've anticipated health-related issues going forward. They've anticipated a critical illness, a disability, premature death, whatever, and you've got insurances in place. And again, for a young person, that's the time to get all those cornerstones in place in your wealth plan, because
Hmm.
that's when you're healthy and that's when the premiums are at their lowest costs,
Right.
rather than waiting until you're in your 40s and then you get the message like, oh my goodness, if I get breast cancer or if I have a stroke, in my 50s, how am I going to deal with that? Well, that it's then too late to buy insurance. So
Right.
the daring and caring is really The caring comes first, meaning you pay attention to your health, and then you dare to step up and get the information that you need to have in order to put that great package together that unfolds over time. Obviously, you're revisiting it constantly, but you basically have a basic framework in place.
Sure. That's great. That's great. And I think, you know, a lot of women don't think about that until it's too late, right? Until they're in that situation. If I was a younger person, or if I'm, you know, just learning this for the first time, you know, what sorts of things should I be starting to research when it comes to both wealth and my health specifically? So if I don't have a lot of knowledge about, let's stick with the wealth side for just a minute. If I don't have a lot of knowledge about wealth, or I'm just starting to really make some decent money, or I have made some money, but I got it in a 401k, all the different scenarios, how do I even start to learn about what options are available to me, or how I start building wealth?
Well, again, focus on working with someone, a trusted advisor. Obviously, that person will be a professional and have all the necessary credentials. But the most important thing is that they've got your back. They
Yeah.
know who you are, they know your situation, they know sort of what your thoughts are about going forward. You may be someone like both of us who is
Hmm.
in a corporate role, but eventually you want to be an entrepreneur. If you're in a corporate role, then chances are pretty good you've got a great benefits package. But beware, because
Yeah.
once you become an entrepreneur 20 years later and you try to get your own coverage, it's going to be that much more expensive. So
Yeah.
treat those company benefits always as a bonus.
Hmm.
Always have your own benefits that are supporting you and your situation going forward. And that advisor is the person who can work with you and put the best framework in place for you with
Yeah.
lots of different options going forward.
Are there specific types of advisors one should look for? What are some criteria for those trusted advisors? Because I think we see a lot of advertisements for, you know, some of these bigger brand companies, or, you know, wealth and investment companies. And a lot of people talk about, well, if they do well, you know, they only do well if I do well. And, you know, how do you kind of differentiate who you should be talking to in this space?
Yeah. And what does that mean? I mean,
Yeah, right.
that's an empty statement.
Right.
Um, I think you need to go out. They're obviously offering lots of opportunities, seminars and webinars.
Yeah.
And the more you participate in those sorts of things, especially in a group setting, the more you get the benefit of everybody else's questions.
Mm,
And that in itself is educating
sure.
you about possibilities. But what you want to see is a sample wealth plan. What does
Mm,
a sample wealth plan look like to you? And how do you determine what an ideal wealth plan is for, ABC client? Doesn't have to be me, but I'm interested in seeing a sample of your work, not
yeah.
just the blah, blah, blah. Because often people think, well, I just want an investment advisor who's going to tell me what are the best stocks that I should be buying now. Well, that's not right at all.
Yeah.
The whole industry is based on know your client, and that's no different than going to a new doctor who the first order of business is to get a blood sample. And that's know your patient.
Yeah.
So just participate to the extent that you can to understand who that person is, what they offer, and what looks good to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And do you Google that? Are there places where you recommend finding those specific things, or specific places? Do you just search, or how do you kind of do that? If you're
Probably all of
all of
the
the
above.
above?
I'm a CFP, so certified financial planner,
Planner.
and I know they're in the US, so you can even do a CFP near me.
Yeah.
If you really have positive moxie,
Yeah.
then you sample all those different approaches. And through that, you're really going to become well educated.
Sure.
You ask friends and family, who are you working with that you think the world of? Do you think that person might be a good fit for me? Would you
Yeah.
do an intro? And then every time you are on a one-on-one with a new person, you want to see a sample. You want to understand what they do and how they do it. And
Yeah.
ideally, you want to see a sample of what a whole wealth plan looks like.
Sure. Sure. Well, that is super, super helpful stuff. I want to go back to at the beginning, you kind of talked about you provided these workshops yourself, right? And you charged a minimal fee for that. And I know that you're very passionate about specializing in women's philanthropy and legacy planning and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that area of focus that you find to be really important, specifically with women? And tell me a little bit about what that looks like in your wealth planning process.
All right. Well, over the last 30 years, a lot has changed because women are earning more
Hmm.
and women are, I mean, this is the great transition from one generation to the next of women inheriting wealth, but then also longer term, probably inheriting more wealth if their partner is a male. And
Hmm.
so all of a sudden you've got these gobs of money, and it's like, how do I make the most of all this money? And more women than not are interested in exercising their power,
Hmm.
some very quietly, some very publicly, more quietly than more publicly. We don't
Sure.
see a lot of hospital wings named after women.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's such a powerful opportunity to
Mm,
really make a huge difference. So the whole topic of philanthropy is huge. Now, not every advisor is going to be keen on that. So that's
yeah,
one question that you want to ask as well. Because if you're prepared to give money away, and you don't have to wait until you die to give money away, that's money that's going away from under their jurisdiction.
true.
So
Yeah,
like my VP and yours who kept talking you into staying, they may not be encouraging you to do this sort of thing. So
yeah.
again, that's when you need to understand where this person's coming from and whether or not they're supportive of what you want to do.
Mhm.
Then, assuming that they are, how do you determine who you want to direct dollars to?
Yeah,
Because it's one thing to get beyond that barrier of wanting to give and wanting to give significantly. But in giving significantly, how do you know how well that organization will steward the wealth that you've just transferred to them?
sure.
So, the key to all of this is to be smart and to be well informed. And how you're well informed is just continually to seek information.
Mhm. Do you find that there is, in your experience with working with women, do you find that most women are in sort of that philanthropy mindset, or is that something new that they've never really heard about before or thought about the benefits of being able to do that in with their wealth?
I think it's fairly new.
Yeah.
Most women know, some women, yes.
Mhm.
And more it's emerging as a real topic of consideration.
Yeah.
But again, women will sort of stand back and go, wow, this is interesting. No,
Uh-huh.
definitely I'm interested, but
Yeah.
not know quite sure how to proceed.
Sure.
So
Sure.
often and I've worked with different organizations, not-for-profit organizations, who will have women who have been significant champions and given a big donation. So
Mhm.
now if you're interested in that organization, you see another woman who's done something significant, that person now becomes a resource to you. And
Yeah.
that's the person that you approach and say, okay, tell me more. Tell me what you were thinking about. How did you come about determining that you were giving 300,000 or whatever it was? And really get to know that. And again, that's a sophisticated donor
Right.
who's given a lot of thought because you will know what that person's profile is.
Mhm.
And so now you've got another resource that you can access who will help you, who
Yeah.
will help you determine what's right for you.
I'm hearing you talk a lot about networking and really finding your resources and doing your due diligence before you get into any of these things, whether it be wealth planning or philanthropy or any of that kind of stuff. And I think that's an important point, for a lot of people new to the space is, don't just jump in with the first person that, so and so
Yep.
references or, those types of things. Really do spend time doing critical research on
Right.
these important topics. Okay, I'm going to move on a little bit. You talked about the age of integrity a little bit, and it's a beautiful reframing of aging, I think. And what does legacy mean to you now? And what do you hope that women, worth, and wellness inspires in the next generation of women?
I think the age I mentioned to a new contact of mine, she and I will do some work together. And I said, the age of integrity to me is really age 65 plus. She
Mm,
said, Nancy, that is too old. It needs to be at 50. And really, the age of integrity is just focusing on honesty. Where are
Mhm.
you at? Can you believe that you've lived this long? Can you believe this, you've done this well? And of course, if you stop anybody in their tracks, they'll always say that they've got more that they want to do. Well,
Sure.
that's fair enough, but let's do a benchmark right now. I mean, already you're still vertical, so this in itself is a
Success.
positive.
Right.
Exactly. This is a
Right.
positive. And so it's just finding a way to bring that best forward. And a lot of integrity is just about honesty and thoughtfulness and sharing and, determination about where do I go from here. So
Mhm.
it's more of a pause and reflect and planning for the future than really anything, and finding a way to bring the best forward in a very positive way.
Sure. If you had to give a piece of advice to yourself, earlier self, or to the next generation, let's say my daughter's age, what would you say is probably the biggest piece of advice or recommendation you would have, should have, could have done?
I think the most important thing is just to make sure that everybody understands that they need to own their life. Their
Mm,
life is their greatest asset. The fact that you have a life and you are still vertical is a huge plus. And so just own that uniqueness, own that opportunity, and then have those conversations with yourself in terms of, where am I at? Where am I headed? Is that
mhm.
truly what I want? And again, going back to our corporate experiences, 5 years before each of us left,
Yeah,
if we'd really had those conversations, we would have busted out probably sooner rather than later.
totally. Right.
Yeah. And so, be selfish, like be selfish about who you are and what you want and where you're headed and how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And, this one program that I used to be a participant in as an entrepreneur, they said major change takes 3 years. So
Mm,
if you've got a big goal, like if you're stepping out, you want to start a business, don't expect it to happen overnight. It's going
yeah.
to, take the 3 year framework. If that's ideally my vision of where I want to be 3 years from now, what steps do I need to take now, sooner rather than later, to get there? And
Yeah.
then you work the plan, you revise the plan, you redirect, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of getting where you want to go means you need to have a lot of conversations with yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that being selfish is I think we think of that as such a bad word or that
Right.
somehow that is not what we should be doing. And I think if I had told myself, like you said back in my corporate days, even, this is all about you. You need to be, focused on yourself and be a little bit more selfish. Boy, things would have changed for me very differently,
Right.
more quickly, right?
Sooner.
Sooner.
Right.
Hmm.
Definitely.
So, as we start to wrap up here, give me kind of your last words of wisdom here in what someone my age might be able to do if they are not where they want to be in their financial planning state. Kind of tell me, give me some hope, I guess, in my sort of next 30 years of life that I hopefully have. What can I be doing now, and what things should I be doing if I didn't take your advice at the beginning?
Okay, well, where you're at now, where I'm at now, is our reality. It is our reality. And I guess, know your reality. Sometimes people don't want to face up to the reality. They
Mhm.
want to ignore it because they're not happy with where they're at. So they'll just ignore it and, let life unfold. Don't do that. Do not do that. It's like own your life, really own your life. And
Mhm.
it is never too late. It's never too late to sort it out. I just captured an article. I'm going to print it out and use it in more of my talks. And it was about a woman who every 10 years, you're never, then the essence was you're never too old.
Yeah.
When I was 50, I did this. When I was 60, I did this. When I was 70, and every decade it was a different thing. And the
Mhm.
message is you're still alive. So why are you just sitting back waiting for the sand to roll over your head?
Right.
Keep
Right.
keep going. Like your life is so unique, so special, and just make the most of it. And don't be afraid to be selfish. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not going to spend a half a day being selfish and prance around so that other people say, "Who the heck does she think she is?" It
Right.
just means find some quiet time every morning or whenever,
Mhm.
and over that coffee, have a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
And you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed at how you start to project when you have that level of confidence and
Mm,
you know that,
yeah.
you're worthy. I mean, the worth word in Women, Worth, and Wellness is all about worthy. You're worthy. You're absolutely worthy.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, I know there's going to be a lot of our listeners that are going to want to find out more about you, Nancy, and how they can work with you or hear about the workshops, the amazing things that you put on. Where can they find out more information about you, workshops, things that you're doing? Where do we go to find that information?
Okay, well, this summer we're just getting ramped up to come out with a whole new offering, but we're not there yet. So what I would suggest is, we've got a tremendous database. Anybody's interested, send me an email, which means you will go into our database and then you'll be the first to know. And it's very simply Nancy@womenworthwellness.com. Nancy
Beautiful.
at womenworthwellness.com. And it's 24/7. If I don't answer you the night before, I'll do the next morning. And just say, it can be as simple as count me in, count me in. So now we've got your email address and that goes into our database and you'll be the first to know when we come up with our new offering.
Love it. Love it. Well, if you have any questions, I do encourage you to reach out to Nancy. She has been a wealth of information, no pun intended, but definitely a great message for young, medium, and older women on really finding out where you're at in life, being selfish, figuring out your financial path, making great decisions, and really using someone like yourself, Nancy, that can help guide us and support us as we all, don't have this sort of understanding of where we need to be or how to get there or any of that kind of stuff. So I so appreciate your insight and all of the information that you've provided. I know it'll be very helpful for our audience. Thank you so much for
Wonderful,
being here.
wonderful. Well, my only recommendation is that you find a way to bring your own uniqueness forward because the world needs more women bringing their uniqueness forward.
Absolutely. And on that, we are going to end. So thank you so much for listening today. If you've got questions for Nancy, we're going to drop her email and her information in our show notes. Be sure to reach out to her. And thank you again, Nancy, for being here today.
Thanks, Don. Well done.
Thank you.